The Rat Who Stole Wealth is a tale of desperation, greed, and the unforeseen consequences of ambition. It's a story that explores the dark side of desire, how far one will go to break free from poverty, and what they might lose in the process. Zuri, a simple rat with dreams larger than life, is about to make a choice that will change his fate forever. Zuri's hunger for wealth begins to consume him as he hears rumors of a powerful witch deep in the forest who can grant any wish. What will he have to sacrifice to get the riches he desires? Will the witch's offer be the answer to his prayers, or will it lead him down a dark and dangerous path? Watch until the end to find out. And if you haven't, please hit that subscribe button to be a part of our folktale family, so you never miss any great stories. Zuri lived in a small village, tucked away in a corner of the forest. Life for him was simple, but he was constantly surrounded by wealthy merchants and landowners, whose lavish homes and rich possessions seemed a world away. Zuri's home was a tiny burrow, tucked between the roots of an ancient tree, where food was scarce and the village children would often chase him away. But his desire for more was growing every day. He could hear them laugh and dance in their large homes, and it filled him with bitterness. His heart ached with the desire to be free from hunger, to live a life of luxury. Zuri's longing for something more grew into an obsession, and soon it consumed him entirely. One day, Zuri overheard a conversation among the older rats about a witch who lived deep in the forest. It was said that she could grant any wish: wealth, power, success for a price. The idea took root in Zuri's mind, and he became obsessed with the idea of using the witch's magic to change his life forever. He dreamed of riches, of wearing fine clothes, of eating from golden plates, and of being treated with respect. His desire for wealth consumed him completely. Zuri began to see the witch not as a dangerous force, but as the key to his escape from the life of poverty that held him down. Little did he know, he was about to make a choice that would change his destiny forever. Zuri's search led him deep into the forest, where the air grew thick with magic. The trees seemed to whisper secrets, and the earth felt alive with ancient power. At the center of the forest stood a cottage made of twisted branches and dark stones. The witch, known as Mama Jara, was an ancient being who could bend the forces of nature to her will. Her eyes glowed with a supernatural light, and her voice was both soft and commanding. She had lived for centuries, watching the world around her change, and she knew the cost of desires like Zuri's. Yet when Zuri arrived, she did not turn him away. Instead, she looked at him with knowing eyes and offered him what he desired: wealth beyond his wildest dreams. The witch's offer was too tempting to refuse. She told him that the price for his riches would be his shadow, a symbol of his very soul. Zuri hesitated at first, unsure of the true cost of such a bargain. The witch's words lingered in the air as she promised him power and riches beyond measure. But deep inside, Zuri felt the stirrings of doubt. What would life be like without a shadow? Would it really be worth it to lose such a vital part of himself? The more he thought about it, the more the promise of wealth clouded his judgment. His heart raced, and without fully understanding the consequences, Zuri agreed. The deal was struck, and just like that, his shadow was taken. With the witch's incantation, Zuri felt a strange sensation, like something had slipped away from him. At that moment, he knew his shadow was gone, but he didn't feel the weight of it until much later. The witch handed him a small glowing stone, which she explained would bring him all the wealth he could ever desire. Zuri's eyes widened as he looked at the stone, now feeling unburdened by the shadow that once followed him. The witch warned him that there would be no turning back once the deal was made, but Zuri didn't care. His dream was right in front of him, waiting to be grasped. He could feel the thrill of power coursing through him, and his desire for wealth blinded him to the deeper cost of his choice. As he left the witch's forest, Zuri's heart raced with excitement. The world around him felt new, brighter, and full of possibilities. He could already see the wealth he had always longed for, just waiting to be seized. But there was something nagging at the back of his mind. A small tinge of unease began to grow in his chest. He noticed that as he walked through the village, no one seemed to notice him in the same way. They didn't greet him with smiles, and when they looked at him, their eyes seemed to pass over him as if he were invisible. He felt a coldness inside, but the wealth he was accumulating quickly drowned out those feelings. The more riches he acquired, the more isolated he became. Yet, despite everything, he couldn't stop. He enjoyed the power his new life gave him. As Zuri's wealth continued to grow, so did his influence over the village. The people who once shunned him now looked at him with awe and fear. He owned the finest homes, the grandest feast halls, and the most luxurious possessions. His nights were spent in opulence, surrounded by banquets and servants who treated him like royalty. But despite all his riches, Zuri began to feel a strange emptiness inside. The wealth had not brought him the happiness he thought it would. At night, when the candles dimmed and the laughter of guests faded, a deep loneliness settled over him. His shadow, once a constant companion, was now gone, and in its place, Zuri felt an annoying sense of disconnection. He no longer felt like part of the world. It was as if something vital had been taken from him. Yet, he brushed these feelings aside, telling himself that soon, the riches would fill the void. But the longer he lived in luxury, the more he realized that something was missing. A part of him was gone, and there was nothing wealth could do to replace it. Days turned into weeks, and the feeling of loss grew stronger. Zuri walked through the village one evening, proud of his wealth, but as he passed by the market square, something unsettling happened. He saw the people he once knew. Faces that used to greet him with warmth now looked at him with fear. They whispered as he passed by, avoiding his gaze, some even crossing to the other side of the street. Zuri's heart began to pound in his chest. It was as though his absence, the loss of his shadow, had made him into something unnatural. He couldn't help but wonder, was his shadow really just a part of him, or was it more? Had he given up more than just a physical form? Every time he passed a mirror, he felt the strange distortion in his reflection. His face, his body, seemed to be there, but something about it felt hollow, as if his true self was missing. He began to feel the weight of what he had lost. His shadow, once tied to him as a symbol of his very being, was now gone. That night, Zuri fell into a deep sleep, his mind restless, filled with strange dreams. In one dream, he saw himself standing in the forest again, before the witch, holding out his shadow for her to take. He felt no regret at first, but as he watched his shadow disappear into the witch's hands, something inside him twisted. He felt his soul unraveling, and he tried to grab it back, but the witch's laugh echoed around him. "You wanted wealth, Zuri," she whispered, "but now you have lost more than you can imagine." Zuri woke with a start, his body drenched in sweat. The dream felt real, too real. As he sat up, he felt the absence of something within him. His pulse raced, and a cold dread filled his heart. He couldn't escape the feeling that the witch's curse was much deeper than he had understood. She had taken his shadow, yes, but she had also taken something far more valuable, his connection to the world, his humanity. The riches, the wealth, the power, none of it mattered if he couldn't feel truly alive. Zuri's desperation grew. He could no longer ignore the emptiness that consumed him. One night, he made a decision. He would return to the witch and beg her to restore his shadow. He couldn't bear to live like this anymore. The gold, the fine clothes, the admiration, it all felt meaningless without the essence of who he was. He made his way back into the forest, following the same path he had walked all those months ago. The air was colder now, the trees darker, their branches twisting like twisted fingers reaching for him. As he approached the witch's hut, he felt the weight of his regret and fear pressing on him. He stood before her once again, his heart pounding. The witch sat on her throne, her eyes gleaming with that same unsettling knowledge. "You have returned, Zuri," she said, her voice echoing with power. "But it's too late. The shadow you sought to reclaim cannot be returned. Zuri fell to his knees. Please, he begged. I can't live without it. I was foolish. I made a deal with you. But now I see that the price was too high. Take everything. I don't want wealth anymore. Just give me back my shadow. The witch looked at him with cold amusement. Your shadow is gone, Zuri, she said. But the cost of your greed is something even I cannot undo. Silence ruled the extravagant mansion as Zuri paced its glittering corridors, each footfall echoing off marble floors like the toll of a funeral bell. And it was there, in the hush between heartbeats, that he finally felt the weight of what he had traded away. Every tapestry seemed to sag, every jewel to dim, for without a shadow to ground him, the bright riches appeared gaudy and unreal, as though painted on thin glass ready to shatter at a whisper. When dawn's first light pierced the stained glass windows, the sun should have cast a warm lattice of color upon the floor, yet no outline of Zuri accompanied the beams. Instead, the rays flowed straight through him, leaving a pale, ghastly void where his silhouette should have been. That absence gnawed at his senses. He could no longer gauge distance properly, felt neither the cool of stone nor the warmth of rugs, and the mansion smelled faintly of dust despite daily cleaning. As if the building itself sensed, it sheltered half a soul. Food tasted like ash, music like distant thunder, and wine, once sweet, became acrid. The pleasure he had chased now curled into a mocking grin of emptiness. In a sudden wave of horror, Zuri understood. The witch had not merely taken a patch of darkness, she had torn free the piece that let him belong to the living world, leaving him a splendid shell echoing with regret. Venturing outside in desperate search of comfort, he found the market square transformed into a stage of uneasy glances and hurried footsteps. Merchants who once bowed deeply now averted their eyes, and children, sensing what adults would not confess, whispered about the hollow rich one, as they clutched one another's hands and scurried past. Zuri tried to hail an old friend, Caliph the storyteller, but Caliph's expression froze as though staring through mist, and his voice faltered. I'm sorry, master, I must tend my stall, before turning away with palpable relief. It was as if people perceived the missing shadow on some instinctive level, shivering at the imbalance it signaled. Even animals reacted. Dogs tucked tails and fled, goats bleated uneasily, and wary birds abandoned rooftops as he passed, leaving an eerie hush behind. That evening, mirrors in his mansion warped his reflection. His eyes appeared sunken, ears too sharp, his whiskers thin and brittle, and though he tried to straighten his posture, the glass insisted on showing a stooped figure heavy with unseen chains. Sleep brought no respite, only vivid dreams of walking under a crimson sky, where faceless villagers pointed and hissed while a colossal black silhouette, shaped like his lost shadow, loomed overhead, its hollow grin promising a debt still unpaid. Jolting awake in sweat, Zuri realized isolation was sealing around him like iron. Society itself was repelling the unnatural, and he could no longer deny the growing void inside. One restless night, he wandered to a hidden garden pond behind the mansion, its surface mirroring the moon with aching clarity, and there, drawn by some ancient instinct, he peered into the water, hoping to glimpse a truth beyond polished mirrors. The reflection that met him was not a rat of velvet fur and bright eyes, but a pale, translucent apparition whose outline flickered, as though the pond hesitated to acknowledge something half-existing. Suddenly, the water rippled of its own accord, and an image surfaced, himself, shadow intact, laughing among humble burrow-mates, sharing crumbs of stolen bread content, despite poverty. The scene shifted. Now he beheld the moment he handed his shadow to Mama Jara, her smoke-woven robes spiraling around him, and as she absorbed the darkness, the pond echoed with the faintest of screams, his own, though he had been deaf to it. Then, a final vision rose, an endless path through the forest, lined with discarded shadows of countless creatures who had bargained before him, each one whispering regrets that merged into a mournful wind. Zuri staggered back, heart pounding, realization blooming like poisoned ivy. The witch's victims remained trapped in a limbo of half-life, condemned to wander unseen. Dread turned to resolve. He could not allow his fate to be another wisp. On that spectral road, redemption was no longer a wish, but a necessity for survival and sanity. At dawn he gathered what courage wealth had never bought, sealing his mansion's ornate gates behind him, and donning only a plain traveler's cloak. Leaving gold and jewels, piled untouched heavy tokens of a bargain gone rancid. First he sought the village Griot, elder Nkosu, whose tales bridged worlds of spirit and flesh. Though Nkosu at first recoiled, the elder listened as Zuri poured forth the story, every greedy impulse, every horrifying consequence. With grave eyes, Nkosu told him of the Ndindi, the ritual path of atonement that leads through the valley of echoing roots, where seekers confront the echoes of their darkest choices. Many return broken, the elder warned, but some emerge whole, their shadows following once more if they have learned humility. Handing Zuri a simple carved staff etched with protective symbols, Nkosu added, "Your journey must be walked in truth. No gold can pave this road." As the sun climbed, Zuri set out toward the distant valley, the mansion shrinking behind him like a gaudy mirage, each step an admission of guilt and an affirmation of intent. He felt lighter without treasure, yet the ache of missing shadow remained, a phantom pain driving him onward. The path ahead promised dangers both physical and spiritual, but for the first time since his bargain, a slender thread of hope shimmered before him, woven not of wealth, but of repentance. He gripped the humble staff, whispered a vow to reclaim his lost self, and walked into the unknown. The trek to the valley of echoing roots led Zuri, through thorn-clotted underbrush and over ridges where vultures circled in wary silence. Yet it was not the physical hardship that unsettled him most. Rather, it was the way each footfall stirred. Faint murmurs from beneath the soil, whispers that sounded disturbingly like fragments of his own greedy thoughts. By dusk the trees thinned, revealing a gouge in the land where ancient fig roots writhed across ravines like petrified serpents. And the air vibrated with low, resonant hums. As Zuri descended, the staff elder Nkosu had given him glowed with a gentle amber pulse, guiding him toward a stone archway chiseled with clan symbols older than memory. He stepped beneath the arch, and immediately the valley answered with a chorus of overlapping echoes, his voice bargaining with Mama Jara, his triumphant laughter counting coins, his hollow sobs in the mansion's silent halls. Each echo struck him like a pebble flung at brittle glass. He clenched the staff and pressed on, vowing not to flee. The path wound between colossal roots that formed natural corridors, and tiny luminescent fungi revealed carvings of animals, restored to wholeness after sacrifice. Hope sparked within him. Perhaps the valley truly could knit his fractured spirit back together, if he proved worthy. At the heart of the valley, Zuri reached a clearing encircled by towering baobabs whose trunks bore 3 wooden masks, one gilded, one charred, and one plain clay. As he approached, a warm wind swirled, and the masks spoke in unison, their lips unmoving. The gilded mask promised renewed riches tenfold if he would abandon his quest and accept destiny's favor. The charred mask croaked that vengeance against the witch could be his power enough to steal every shadow she had ever taken if he would surrender compassion. The plain clay mask merely whispered, "Choose humility and walk forward empty-pawed." Each offer throbbed in his chest. Gold glittered in his mind's eye. Revenge blazed at old wounds. Yet the clay mask reminded him of evening sharing crumbs with elders before greed consumed him. Shaking, Zuri lifted the clay mask, pressed it to his face, and felt its cool surface dissolve like river silt, leaving only the scent of damp earth and the faint thrum of his own heartbeat. The other masks cracked, releasing black moths that scattered into the dusk. Instantly his surroundings brightened. For the first time in months, he sensed the friction of soil under claws and a subtle weight brushing the ground behind him, a partial flicker of shadow beginning to reform. Before he could rejoice, the forest darkened and Mama Jara materialized atop a twisted root, her robes now swirling with countless half-formed silhouettes trapped in their folds. "Clever rat," she hissed, eyes blazing like forge embers. "But humility alone will not break my binding. Offer me your staff, symbol of the Elder's protection, and I shall release the rest of your shadow." The valley fell silent, waiting. Zuri tightened his grip on the carved wood, feeling its etched glyphs pulse. It represented trust, community, and the guidance freely given by Elder Ankosu, qualities he had once ignored. Handing it over would sever those bonds and restore him only in appearance, not in truth. He shook his head. "I will not trade another's gift for selfish gain again," he declared, voice steady. Mama Jara's smile curled into a snarl. She thrust her palm outward, sending a cyclone of spectral shadows swirling around him, each whispering temptations, gold feasts, adoration. Zuri closed his eyes, knelt, and planted the staff firmly into the earth. He spoke softly, recounting every misdeed, every instance of greed, and begged forgiveness from the spirits of the valley. Light flared where the staff met soil, erupting into a column that scattered the cyclone. Shadows shrieked and dissolved, and Mama Jara staggered back, her smoky robes tattered by radiant winds. In that burst, Zuri felt a warm tether snap into place at his heels, his shadow stretching true and solid once more. When the brightness ebbed, the witch had vanished, leaving only the rustle of leaves and a sky paling toward morning. Zuri looked down. His shadow clung faithfully to his stance, matching every movement with gentle certainty. Yet it felt different, denser, woven with faint golden threads of the valley's light, a reminder of lessons learned. Exhaustion flooded him, but so did a quiet joy. The valley had accepted his repentance. As he turned to depart, the roots shifted, opening an easy path uphill, and small woodland creatures emerged to watch him pass, not in fear, but with calm curiosity. At the valley rim he paused, gazing across the forest toward the distant rooftops of the village glowing in sunrise. He carried no gold, no jewels, only the staff and a restored soul. Still, his heart felt fuller than any treasure vault. With every step homeward, he rehearsed how he would live differently, openly sharing food stores, aiding the poor burrow families, and telling young ones the cautionary tale of a rat who bartered away his own darkness. Behind him, his rejoined shadow flowed softly over the path, no longer a burden or a void, but a silent companion marking the return of wholeness. And though he knew life would test his humility again and again, Zuri also knew the cost of wealth without balance. Valley's echoes would forever remind him that true richness grows only where integrity casts its loyal shade. When Zuri crossed the village boundary at sunrise, he paused beside the communal well where once he had flaunted gold trinkets, feeling unfamiliar warmth as dawn tinted the mud-brick walls auburn. His shadow settled faithfully at his heels, and villagers who had previously skirted him now regarded him with tentative curiosity rather than fear. Without ceremony, he returned the mansion's keys to the chief elder, insisting the grand house be repurposed as a granary and infirmary, and moved back into his original earthen burrow, patching cracks, sweeping dust, grateful for its modest shelter. Children gathered, wide-eyed, asking where his jeweled rings and silken capes had gone. He knelt to their height, explaining that wealth unshared turns hearts cold, and offered them roasted groundnuts instead. Word spread quickly. The hollow rich one had come back changed, bearing no treasure but speaking of a valley where echoes judge greed. At dusk the council fire crackled, and Zuri, once dismissed from such gatherings, took the talking stick only when invited, recounting his journey without embellishment, naming his faults, praising Elder Ankosu's guidance. Many elders nodded, seeing sincerity in his steady gaze. Some wept softly, remembering loved ones lost to similar temptations. As stars emerged, Zuri felt a gentle pull inside, not the itch of ambition, but the steady rhythm of belonging, a pulse he had not felt since before that fateful bargain. The following moon cycles found Zuri rising before first light to labor in communal fields. Sleeves rolled to his shoulders, claws dark with soil as he sowed millet and okra beside youths who once mocked him. He introduced techniques he had observed. During travels, mulching with leaf litter, digging swales to capture rain, transforming dusty plots into green waves. When harvest came early and abundant, he insisted surplus be stored in the refurbished mansion granary, rationed during droughts. Villagers marveled that the very halls once echoing with decadent feasts now sheltered baskets of grain for widows and the sick. Zuri also exchanged his silken garments for rough-spun cotton, and with the loom-keepers crafted blankets embroidered with symbols of balance, a rat beside a fig root, a shadow reunited with light. During evening markets he quietly settled unpaid debts of struggling traders, always through anonymous pouches so pride remained intact. Yet he accepted grateful smiles when discovered. Understanding humility did not mean invisibility, but honest presence. Gradually laughter returned to doorways where once shutters had closed at his approach, and the marketplace rang with lively drums celebrating not wealth, but communal abundance. Still, each night before sleep Zuri placed a carved bowl of millet outside his burrow for passing wanderers, remembering hunger's sting and pledging never to forget those still journeying toward their own redemption. Despite outward renewal, Zuri's dreams occasionally trembled with remnants of Mama Jara's smoke. In half-sleep, he felt the witch watching, testing whether his reformed path would endure temptation. One stormy night he awoke to find his shadow lengthening unnaturally, whispering promises of buried treasure beneath the old merchant road. Heart-hammering, he recognized the specter as a final echo of his greed, no longer the witch's curse, but an internal ghost craving acknowledgement. Rather than flee, Zuri lit a palm oil lamp, placed it behind him, and faced the wall where the distortion danced. Softly he spoke, admitting the thrill wealth once gave him, confessing fear of future poverty, but reaffirming that joy rooted in service outweighed gold. As he spoke, the wandering silhouette shrank until it aligned once more with his true form. Outside, thunder receded, and night insects resumed their chorus. Zuri understood then that redemption was not a finishing line but a daily practice, tending fields, aiding neighbors, and confronting new desires with honesty. In dawn's pale glow, he walked to the riverside shrine, left offerings of kola nuts and honey, and thanked ancestral spirits for patience as he learned to carry his shadow responsibly. The river's surface reflected him whole, proving to spirits and self that humility had taken deeper root than any fleeting allure of riches. At season's end, the village elders declared a feast to celebrate rejuvenated harvests and collective harmony, naming it the Festival of Balanced Shadows. Lanterns carved from calabashes lined dusty lanes, casting playful silhouettes that reminded all of the unseen threads binding beings to the earth. At the festival's height, Elder Nsusu invited Zuri to the central platform. Musicians hushed as the elder presented him with a simple wooden amulet etched with twin images, a filled granary, and a humble burrow. "May this remind us," Nkosu proclaimed, "that wealth becomes blessing only when shared, and shadows remain loyal when hearts are true." Zuri accepted with moist eyes, raising it not as trophy but as communal symbol. Cheers rose, drums thundered, and dancers spun to honor the lesson. Children painted their own shadows with white clay, then washed them in the river, chanting gratitude for belonging. Looking around, Zuri saw no trace of the isolation once strangling him, only faces aglow with unity, his own shadow mingling carefree among others in lantern light. Above, stars shimmered like ancestral eyes approving the renewed bond between creature, community, and spirit. And though challenges would come with future seasons, the village now possessed a living testament, a rat who had stolen wealth, lost himself, and found a richer treasure in humility. A reminder that even the smallest among them could fall to greed, but also rise, wiser, casting a shadow that guided rather than darkened the path. Months after the Festival of Balanced Shadows, word of the village's remarkable turnaround spread along trade routes and river paths. Messengers from drought-stricken hamlets arrived, asking how barren soils had become lush and how a community, once fractured by envy, now thrived in harmony. Zuri welcomed them beneath the shade of the granary he had once called a mansion, sharing seeds, simple irrigation tricks, and most importantly, the story of his bargain. He spoke without embellishment, admitting the thrill of sudden fortune, and the void it carved into his spirit once his shadow was severed. Listeners sat wide-eyed, not at the magic of wealth, but at the miracle of repentance that followed. As each envoy departed with sacks of grain and small carved staffs bearing valley symbols, Zuri felt the ripples of his lesson travel farther than gold ever had. That night, while grinding maize beside village youth, he realized the witch's curse had transformed into a gift of cautionary wisdom, capable of nourishing lands he might never see. The once greedy rat had become a conduit for generosity reaching far beyond the village boundaries. During a supply journey to an outlying settlement, Zuri paused at a weather-worn crossroads shrine where travelers offer coins for safe passage. There, cloaked in twilight, stood Mama Jara. No tempest, no smoke, simply a quiet figure tracing concentric circles in the dust. Startled yet calm, Zuri approached with respectful bow rather than fear. "You keep growing, little one," she murmured, voice softer than he recalled, "yet temptations will forever circle hearts." She gestured to the offering bowl, empty save for 2 cracked seeds. "Another seeker will stand here soon. What counsel will your shadow give when greed whispers to them?" Zuri placed his wooden amulet into the bowl and answered, "May they see this and remember balance before the bargain is struck." The witch's eyes, once blazing embers, flickered like candlelight in wind. With a nod she vanished among whispering reeds, leaving Zuri alone yet oddly bolstered. He sensed no lingering threat, only a perpetual test, each act of humility reinforcing the tether to his restored shadow, each lapse risking its unraveling again. Seasons turned, and village children gathered at dusk around communal fires where Zuri, now graying at the whiskers, recounted tales. They gasped when he described jewels piling overnight, and shivered at the thought of a missing shadow. Brightest attention came when he spoke of planting millet, patching roofs, and how laughter returned only when possessions ceased to matter. He guided them in drawing their silhouettes on mud walls, then encouraged washing the outlines away with river water to symbolize letting go of greed. Elders noted how quarrels over market stalls lessened. Youths volunteered for irrigation, digs without bribery. One evening a boy asked, "If Mama Jara offered riches again, would you take them?" Zuri placed a hand over the boy's chest where heartbeats drum and replied, "When your inside is full, outside glitter looks dull." The children repeated the phrase, turning it into a sung refrain that drifted on fire sparks toward the stars. In their eyes Zuri saw future traders, hunters, weavers' souls who might face their own witches yet carry early armor of wisdom forged from a rat's costly lesson. Years later, during a luminous harvest moon, Zuri walked the valley rim where his redemption began. His staff tapped steady rhythm while his shadow glided in perfect symmetry, no distortion, no whisper beyond the breeze. Kneeling, he pressed a palm into the earth, thanking the roots for echoing his folly and guiding his ascent. He left a final gift, seeds from the thriving granary, buried beside the clay mask fragments that had set him free, trusting new shoots would remind future travelers that humility can bloom even from shattered temptation. As dawn's first light stretched across fields he once envied, his shadow merged with tall sorghum stalks, indistinguishable from the living tapestry of the land. Returning home, he felt no lingering pull of gold, only quiet happiness and shared work, honest rest, and a community whose prosperity now measured not in coins, but in collective well-being. Thus the tale of the rat who stole wealth settled into legend, proof that even the smallest creature could tumble into darkness, yet rise again brighter, casting a shadow not of greed, but of graceful balance for generations to follow. Thanks for watching till the end. If this story gave you goosebumps, give it a like and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're tuning in from. I read everyone. Till then, take care, folks.